bring you this conversation now. So President Cyril Ramaphosa today met with the United States Ambassador to South Africa, Brent Bozell. In a post on social media platform X, the presidency said engagement provided an opportunity to strengthen and recalibrate South Africa, the United States relations, and reaffirm both countries' commitment to constructive engagement on matters of mutual interest. For analysis on this now, we're joined by Political Economist, that's Professor Patrick Bond. Prof, thank you for your time on the program. So we are told this engagement provides an opportunity to strengthen and recalibrate South Africa and the United States relations and reaffirm both countries. Do you think that's something that could be achievable?
Could be. There are a few things going on economically that might help explain this. Mkolisi, thanks for having me join you and your viewers. Look, the first is what we just saw last week. The Africa Growth and Opportunity Act is going through the U.S. Senate. Whether it goes to the other part of the U.S. Congress, the House, and then gets signed by Trump is still to be seen, but it's likely because just before the big November 3rd midterm election, probably Trump doesn't want that distraction because it might unravel his spending bill. Second, there are some deals being done. We don't have details, but we know ExxonMobil hopes to sell huge amounts of liquefied natural gas, methane, to South Africa, particularly for a Richards Bay Eskom plant that's going to be built. And also there's the rare earth materials, the precious metals, and the platinum metals group, the gold. There are a few things that the U.S. really does need from South Africa, and we have more platinum group metals and chrome pretty much than anyone else. So those are things that are, I think, under the surface. We don't know the extent to which those relations might hold, but the frictions between the U.S. and South Africa, those are constant.
Yeah, and interestingly, that was going straight to my next question, because we've seen that relationship, which has been anything but conventional. I mean, we've seen the ambassador himself being quite critical of Pretoria on many instances, where he spoke about, the foreign policy choices, including South Africa's position on Israel and Iran as well, and also those claims of non-alignment, right? When we see what happens now we have this this major giant that is willing to come to the table and negotiate. What do we make of this new significant sort of turn?
Well, the fact that Ramaphosa had him come in separately today does indicate that friction at the beginning of Brent Bozell's term. Do you remember he gave a talk at the BizNews conference in Hermanus? He was too frank, and he said, "Oh, who cares about the courts if they allowed Julius Malema to sing a struggle song that was insulting, kill the boer, kill the farmer." He's also said, look, the rural violence, the expropriation, the 30% requirement that Elon Musk faces to come in with Starlink, and then, as you say, the geopolitics. Those are things that he said he wants to change. He said very explicitly he wants South Africa to withdraw the case against Israel for genocide in the International Court of Justice. And indeed, the U.S. is just trying to shut down those Hague courts entirely. So it's a lot of friction. And Brent Bozell he's not a diplomat, really. I mean, he was a right-wing media ideologue, did that job very well since the 1980s. But he isn't going to be going to Donald Trump with the charm and the persuasion that you'd expect from a diplomat. He's going there with the muscle of the U.S. That's a muscle that we know from bullying and the con man features of Washington, of Donald Trump himself. The frictions now with Canada, the frictions with so many parts of the world, and that war with Iran that the U.S. seems to be losing. So they are on their back foot, and I don't know that Ramaphosa's interests and South Africa's interests are to get much closer to Donald Trump and his envoy at this stage.
Interestingly, BRICS also in September?
Yeah, and that's a very curious situation, because if you saw BRICS last year, there was a lot of talk of unified reaction to Donald Trump's tariffs, which were brutal, and they still are. Although the Supreme Court in the U.S. said, too brutal, you can't do that, that's illegal. But what's happening September 12, 13 in Delhi will be fascinating, because Trump did, against expectations, really split the BRICS in half. So on the one hand, you've got India, the host, Narendra Modi, very close to Trump and to the Israeli leader, Benjamin Netanyahu. He gave him a big hug just before the killing of another BRICS leader, the supreme leader, Ayatollah Khamenei, on February 28. And then you've got Saudi Arabia, now much more of a member. UAE and Egypt, and also Ethiopia, and now Indonesia, which is connecting to the US, may supply troops for the Board of Peace. Wow, that's 6 out of the 11 BRICS members leaning to the US. And this is supposed to be a place where they talk alternatives to unipolar Western and especially US power. I don't think it's going to be a very good weekend there.
And interestingly, you know, as we're having this conversation as well as that look ahead that you just gave us now, all conversations are circling back now to this meeting where everybody just wants to know, would it be possible for Pretoria to really build a strong relationship with Washington while maintaining a strong sort of independence, right? Or would Washington effectively want South Africa to know where its bread is buttered in a way?
Exactly, and you know, that's exactly where Trump wants everyone under his thumb, and we've seen that just in recent hours with Mark Carney, a sort of reasonable, moderate business Prime Minister of Canada, just breaking that relationship and saying we can't do business with this man. And I think if that's one signal that the world must figure out what to do with Donald Trump, it needs much more unity, because his capacity to divide and rule has been profound. All one might hope for, if that is the route to take, more confrontational, not offering him a game of golf to come to the G20. We won't even let South Africa come to the G20 now in Miami. But if that is the route to take, then the African continent can start thinking about maybe a boycott of the US, like China has threatened, on what the US needs, the rare earth minerals and other raw materials. But then it would also be about uniting the world against Trump. And I think after he loses, probably in November, and he's under impeachment threat in the US, it'll be a little easier. He won't be as effective a bully.
Thank you so much for your time and insights on the program this evening. That is, of course, political economist Professor Patrick Bond joining us here on the program this hour.